Why don't we go ahead and get started for the work session meeting for tonight. Thank you all for attending. For the record, Councilman Quinn will not be here. He is out of town on business. And Supervisor LaFountain is at a not a public meeting, he's at a community outreach meeting tonight. He may be here a little bit later, but he doubts it. So it'll just be the three of us running the meeting tonight. Moving on to number 2, approval of minutes for October 14th, 2015.
I'll move for approval of the minutes.
I will second that.
Thank you. Monthly reports, there are none showing on the agenda tonight. Public hearing, there is none scheduled for tonight. And number 5, under guests, Chris Charlton. Why don't we go ahead and tee that up if you can?
Thank you. Chris Charlton is the owner of property at 2136 Penfield Road. It's one of the 7 original properties that was rezoned by the board back in 1991. And Chris and I have spoken over the years, and actually most recently, the application is currently before the planning board for the U of R Urgent Care Center is driving Chris's need to come to see you. I think he's trying to be proactive in the sense that the board back in 1991 made a condition of approval, number 5, that stated that when the 7th unit was converted from residential to commercial, that all the property owners would have to develop an access road behind their properties to provide access from the Summit facility to the drive at Harris Wayland Park Road to provide access to a signalized intersection to make it safer to get in and out of the area over there on Penfield Road. I spoke to Chris recently and indicated to him that the board is reviewing this application. He actually was aware of that and did submit materials to the planning board and I think spoke at the planning board meeting, if I'm not mistaken, so he's aware of the application. And he, as the letter I sent from him to you, you noted that there were some issues that he has regarding the site plan process that were separate from what he had asked from you. So, in essence, what he's asking for is relief to allow him to retain his access point onto Penfield Road. And I'm going to let you talk to the board a little bit more about it, but he is actually asking for relief from condition number 5 of the resolution in 1991. Chris, with that, why don't you step in?
Okay, well, as it states here, I'm attempting to maintain preservation of the curb cut on 441. We have a parking lot in front of the building that services 10 parking spaces and 1 handicap space, and it is the primary entranceway into the facility. Our clients have no problems in terms of ingress and egress with regard to the property to shift the entrance to the rear of the property would not only take away from the benefit of the property because it's a psychological haven for trauma victims that I work with, but the so trying to maintain the sanctuary environment. So there's also in the original documents the need to create parking in the back from that access road, and I maintain that there's sufficient parking in the front without disruption to the flow of traffic on 441.
Okay. When you talk about sanctuary in the back, can you give a little bit more detail as to what that would look like?
Well, it's in the back of the property. It's all green, and there's a wall of trees and shrubs in the back, and it creates a non-disturbed, gentle viewing area where our rooms where we conduct the therapy is primarily in the back, and so that is by sanctuary I mean so when I'm dealing with trauma-related victims, I'm talking about people that have severe PTSD, where as little disturbance as possible is essential for their welfare in terms of treatment. It's away from the noise and the traffic that's on 441, so it creates an environment conducive to healing in the back of the property.
Okay. And how long have you been the property owner?
8 years.
8 years now?
Yes, 8+ years.
Jim, how close would the access road be to these trees he speaks of?
He does have several trees on his property. The town recently went in and took some trees down on the parkland property
Right.
because they had died internally. They just weren't
Mhm.
healthy anymore, so we took those down. He still does have some trees on his property. I suspect that some of those trees would have to be taken out to accommodate the access road, and he knows about having installed the access road. I don't think that's the real issue at hand right now for you. I think the issue at hand is having to develop additional parking and having to illuminate your curb cut at this point in time, although you're
Correct.
not excited about having to put an access road in, you know that that is a requirement.
Yes.
So that wasn't the issue at hand, but there's probably a good possibility he would lose some trees with the access road.
Yeah, I was
once
thinking,
developed.
you know, you see about keep off 441, well, now that road will be created, that will change your back end, no matter how you look at it. I mean, there's a possibility you could have a access off the access road into your existing parking lot and not have to develop the parking lot in the back. You know, keep it, have a road go from the access road to your parking lot existing. But things will change when that access road is created, because the trees may leave, there'll be traffic, not a lot, but there'll be cars coming and going that you didn't have before. But that's part of what was mandated back in 1991 when this was rezoned
Mhm.
with a condition.
Right.
So how do you
Well,
relate to that?
so the traffic coming on to our property, we have 3 treatment windows that look right back on that area. So if I have traffic coming in and coming out of there, that's going to be sensitive with regard to the welfare of our clients. And secondly, that road would have to come in on the eastern side of the property, and there's a drainage ditch that is there right now, demarcating the property line, so that road would have to literally be built over that, and the cost of that would be,
That would be
prohibitive.
between the realtor's house and the...
There is a drainage, he's right, there's a drainage easement between the two properties. It's a depressed area right now, it's a swale, I believe, that goes to the state right of way.
yes.
That would have to be piped and then graded over to accommodate the access road.
Okay.
And if that's some of the thing if that's one of the options you're thinking of, that would be the possibility of possibly working with the adjacent property owner to defray some costs so that it's not just all dumped on him to do that.
It truly is a shared endeavor.
Mhm.
Although it may not happen all at the same
If that were to
time.
happen, then it would give them both the ability to get access to their existing parking lots without having to build new parking
Mhm.
to the rear.
Jim, when you and I spoke earlier, you mentioned that you had kind of a, preliminary map or layout of those properties over there.
Jeff Benway prepared one many
Okay.
years ago that defined how to tie things in. I think initially they were looking at the idea, Jeff was particularly looking at the idea of possibly building access points to the rear to allow people to come to the site and go to the rear and then enter into the back of the
Yeah.
buildings. Some of those buildings aren't designed to accommodate rear access for that kind of thing, that they might have to be modified as well, depending on handicap accessibility requirements and that type of thing.
Okay. All right, so basically, Chris, you're looking, I call it a waiver, but you're looking for some relief to that requirement? Is that a
Yes.
correct statement?
Yes.
Okay, okay. Any other questions from the town board?
Not for me.
No, I mean, I think there's probably some sort of middle ground here, given the state of development of that strip, but I struggle with, for any property owner, I struggle with us needing to be consistent, and certainly when it comes to waivers or basically excusing someone from a requirement that they took on. I'm assuming you knew about this when you purchased the property.
I was informed of it. The likelihood of this ever happening in this century was considered to be low.
Okay.
So,
But as far as the condition you're seeking relief from, when you purchased the property, you were well aware of that?
I was told of it, but I did not consciously register that it would necessitate. I knew that there was an access road, but paving the entire back of the property for parking into my facility, no, I was not aware of that stipulation.
All right, staff, anything else?
No, not at this time. Obviously, you have two board members missing tonight, and
Right.
certainly they'd have to be, filled in as to what Chris is requesting, and they'll probably have to discuss this. And I think, Chris, you're gonna be leaving, soon to go to, Europe,
Ukraine.
Ukraine, and you're gonna be gone till when?
I am here for, I'll be here the 10 days before Thanksgiving, and I'll be gone the 2 weeks after Christmas.
So our next work session is going to be that around the 16th or so, I'm sorry, the
Yeah.
18th.
18th?
November 10th?
November
Tuesday, the
18th.
Tuesday.
I'm sorry. that's
Tuesday
right. It's
before
the 10th.
Veterans
That's
Day.
correct. You're
Yeah,
right,
it's the
it's the
10th, yeah.
10th instead of the 11th, so. I would suspect the board would want to talk to the two members that are missing so that we could have a follow-up for the next meeting.
And in the meantime, if there are some options that could be, short of a total excusal of the
Right.
requirement, I think that sets a precedent, especially in this type of a development, where we have property owners who have been willing and to undergo that expense. Some people come in expecting that access road to be a benefit
Mhm.
for their property or business, and I certainly want to make sure that we are true to that original resolution.
And just for the board's information, right now, this is all hinging on the approval process for the U of R. And I don't know where that stands right now, but obviously, I don't think anything's going to happen in the immediate future. So it's not like, you're being rushed into a situation. And Chris certainly, I think, was just trying to be proactive in getting it out on the table first, rather
Yeah.
than waiting till springtime to,
Right.
figure out what has to be done at the last second. So, I think we have time to talk to the other board members and then also look at some alternatives for him as well.
Okay.
Right. I believe it's a different type of facility than the others going in. Those are high-traffic areas, and quietness, solitude is primary concern with regard to my business. So I believe it is a unique situation in that regard.
And we have to be mindful of the perpetuity of a piece of real property as well. You're not going to be there forever. So we need to make sure that we're true to the plans that were in place when the significant rezoning was done in that area. And while we're, I think, mindful of requests and mindful of certain situations that a business may have, we have to also look at it in perpetuity. So that into the future, we're not creating a problem for either future businesses or adjacent businesses as well.
Mhm.
So I think there's probably some alternatives that we can look at.
The other thing I have to do in that way is we do have to have contact with the owners of the adjacent property to let them know. I've made every effort to contact them, and they're not available at this point in time.
Okay.
So I've got to do that as well, so
Good.
we'll get them plugged in as well.
All right. Anything else from the board members? Anything else from staff? Chris, anything else that you'd like to tell us about?
I think that's sufficient, so, yes.
All right, well, thank you for coming.
All right. thank
Appreciate you spending the time with us tonight.
You're welcome.
All right, on action items, law and finance, code of the town of Penfield. Mr. Valentine?
Yes, thank you. On September 28th, we conducted a public hearing based on proposed modifications to the town code. Subsequent to that public hearing, we've received 2 comments. This was shared with the board earlier, but I provided hard copies this evening for your consideration as well. We also had some minor adjustments. I'm talking to the town attorney. I've been working through those minor adjustments with him. But just seeing, where the board's at with the code. We obviously do have to send, if the board's okay with the changes from the attorney, and then if the board wants to consider any of the public's comments, have General Code, who's our agent for this, make those changes to the code, and then present you back a final copy of it, for then, if the board so deems to vote on to adopt it as our code. So if the board wants to move ahead, I see we did get 2 comments. I don't know if the board wants me to review those.
Well, I think we should
Yeah.
get back to the.
I say that the one comment was about relocating trucks, SUVs, other larger vehicles in parking lots, requiring them to be located in a different location. The other was talking about our code says you can't park in a travel lane, but I think it's an enforcement issue with having people park their landscape things off the side of the road. It should be on a shoulder, or off the road, should not be in the road. I think that's an enforcement issue we can talk about with, the sheriff's
So
office
you
about.
don't think it should be changed in the code, it's just a matter of...
I don't think it needs to change in the code. I mean, I think people can park off the shoulder, can do other things. If they're parking in the
Yeah.
road or blocking the road.
If
you
we
know,
made
that-
this change, it wouldn't make any difference.
That's
Still,
a
people are
traffic
violating
control
it.
thing
Yes.
with the sheriff's office if they feel somebody's blocking
Mhm. You feel that we have enough
traffic.
information in
Yeah, I
the
think
code
it's,
to...
I think it's just a matter of, if it needs to be enforced a little bit
Mhm.
better
Okay.
on that. The other comment about relocating cars and trucks in parking lots, I've never seen that done before. Typically, the only time you see designated parking spaces is for compact cars or something in a parking garage. But
Right.
typically you don't see them differentiated. I understand, there might be site issues of backing in and out of parking spaces if there are big trucks. I've just never seen that done. I don't know how you would
Right.
want to enforce that or make that a
You
law
don't
of the
see that
town.
in the other towns or doing anything?
I haven't, no.
I also think it's, certainly it's a valid concern, but it's not as if this is one of several, complaints we've heard that our code department is saying they're lacking sufficient ability to enforce something, that the code is lacking in teeth.
Yeah.
I think if we do see that type of evidence come forward, then we could take a look at, amending or adding or in
And
some fashion.
We can keep these on file, and if there is subsequent things, obviously the code's a living document, so,
Right.
this is gonna kind of be it was an update just to codify it, get it online. We've done a lot of work. Staff's done a great job in cleaning up a lot of things. But these were the only two comments that I had received that have been passed along to me thus far. And then working with Dick Horowitz, he had some adjustments to the length of time for imprisonment if people aren't meeting the code requirements. And Paul, maybe you can speak more to it, but I believe he was suggesting things to be 15 days or less. If you make things more than 15 days, it goes from being a misdemeanor it goes from being a violation to a misdemeanor, and then, there's some additional things with that. So he was just adjusting the number of days of imprisonment if people are second, third, offense down the
Right.
line. So those were the other adjustments that I'm looking to direct, general code to make those changes, so.
Okay.
So we're looking to move this on to potential resolution then for town board vote?
Yeah, if the board is
Okay.
comfortable with this or doesn't want to include these,
You've had the public hearing.
Yeah.
I'll feed back to general code. Hopefully, a week, 2 weeks, we can turn around and then, be
Okay.
looking for a resolution sometime in November to the
Right.
board's adoption.
I think this board's prepared, certainly.
I move it.
Yeah, let's move it forward if there's no disagreement, and then just work with the supervisor on the timing of the resolution.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
great.
Will do.
Thank you. Mark, again to you, mixed-use development hearing date.
Yes, this is the next step in the process. We had presented you on September 16th this document, which is a document that was created by a steering committee that was formed based on the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan was a document created by the public, the residents, that set forth consideration to do mixed use at some locations within the town. Staff took that, created 2 steering committees. One was for Manitou Lake. Subsequently, that property's been sold and is not under consideration at this time. The other piece is for 250. So along the Route 250 corridor, the steering committee, which is made up of stakeholders, residents, neighbors adjacent to the area, they've prepared this document for your consideration, given to you to take a look at, that they'd like to see that property potentially rezoned to mixed use, one, to create a mixed use district. We have an ordinance that the attorney is looking at currently, but to move ahead with this document on this. So I think tonight is just to kind of see, if the board has any initial questions. I think we need to schedule a work session with the board, go through the document, go through the individual items, whether you want committee members here to share that with you or staff members on their behalf, but to go through those items and then ultimately look to, if the board would like to move ahead, is to schedule a public hearing date for it, open up to the general public as a whole. We've shared, and I'm just kind of looking at I know, so we had 10 committee meetings working on the document throughout. We had held some initial neighborhood meetings with the East Penfield Homeowners Association, the Wayland Meadows neighbors, Country Club East. We've met with the neighbors on Renwick Run and along Penfield Center Road, and obviously the neighbors on 250 have been part of it. Many of them here tonight, looking forward to that. So we've tried to do a lot of community outreach, but ultimately we need to schedule a public hearing, to open it up to the community at large. The document is online. We've continued to put it online to be open about what's out there, so it is available for the public to review as well as what the board has. But looking to the board to see if you want to schedule a work session to go through this, to sit down and go through the document. Obviously, we'll get much more detail in what's included, what's involved with that, and then hopefully ultimately the board,
Right.
if you want to move ahead, at least have a public hearing and see, what the community as a whole is.
I
No.
think we should take it one step at a time, and we've just received this individually, so we're just digesting it now since we were not a part of this
Nope.
document. So certainly there's a lot of important information there for us to digest individually before we even, I think, then bring it together to discuss as a group, before we even get to scheduling a
Obviously,
hearing.
two
So
board
December
members
is
missing
December
tonight,
should be good.
but we'll look to schedule work with the supervisor to
Yeah.
schedule a work session to come back and get into the document and go through that. First, to make sure the board's comfortable with it, and if you want any changes, updates, revisions to it, and then move to a hearing date. And
I think that sounds like a good idea. I think that the residents that were on the committee put in a lot of time and effort into this, and I don't necessarily think it's that they need to be here for the work session meeting, but certainly if they can attend for the public hearing,
Yep.
I think that would be good.
Sure, but this is their document.
Right.
This is what they presented to you, and they.
But if they wanted to come to the
Sure,
work session.
no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we open it up. I mean, obviously, we let
Yeah.
people know that it's going to be discussed tonight. We'll let the committee members know it'll be discussed at the work session, and then, obviously, once the public hearing, we'll,
Yeah.
again, send an email blast out to the group and share with
Again, it
everybody
can
to
only
please
help
support
us
it.
when we get to a public hearing, whenever that may be, for us to fully, digest it together and make sure we're fully informed so that we can ask questions and respond at the hearing as well, instead of just, showing up with a notebook.
Yeah. Okay, is that
Yes.
good?
Okay,
Alright,
so
let's-
I'll work with the supervisor to schedule a
Work session.
work session to do the document, and then we'll take it to the next
And
step.
then after that, we'll set up a public hearing.
Okay.
Okay, great, thank you. Informal discussion on 1271 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. Jim?
Thank you, Andy. We had a public hearing on 10/20, I'm sorry, I take that back. We had a public informational meeting on 10/21. Mr. Vendel presented his proposal to develop or have a potential development for incentive zoning on his property, 1271 9 Mile Point Road. We didn't receive any input from the public, either pro or con, regarding the proposal. I think at this point in time, I think we're looking to get a feel from the board as to how comfortable you are to move forward for a public hearing for preliminary and final approval, or preliminary overall with maybe phased final approval for one of the phases to develop. It'd probably be a two-phase project or a three-phase project, depending on the situation.
That's how we did it with Abington.
That's right.
As the phases came, we'd have another hearing. I would support that, starting the first two phases.
One of the things I think the board and the staff have to do is we have to come to a consensus and a conclusion as to what we're going to do for incentive zoning for the actual incentives.
Right.
As a matter of fact, later on down under informational, we'll talk about the fact that Rudy's in again for preliminary and final,
Right.
and the first question out of his mouth was, what are
Right.
we doing for an incentive? So, and certainly, I'm sure the vendors would want to know that
Same
before they
question.
make a commitment to move forward with
Right.
mapping and everything
Right,
else, so.
Even without that in place, we could still go ahead with the
But I guess,
scheduled public hearing.
yeah, that's right. I guess the main question is the board comfortable with what it saw on the 21st, enough to allow them to move forward if they see fit to do that for a preliminary and final application?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. We've vetted this out pretty thoroughly, and Mr. Vendel's been before us a couple times to talk about
Mhm.
it, so I'm comfortable with this moving forward.
All right, so we've got an action item for them to develop what our incentive program is going to be in terms of, and we've got to do that for Mr. Newfield as well. So we'll be working on that with you, and that might be another issue to resolve it in a work session at some
Yeah.
point in the near future.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. Moving on to informational items, law and finance.
Yes, these aren't just updates. I just want to make you aware of the fact that I have received the applications for the three businesses that will be installed in the building at 2150 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road, which is Dr. Falone's building. I've received applications for the Airzo, the Moe's, and the AT&T Home Center. The intent is to put resolutions in for the 4th of November, setting public hearings for the 2nd of December. Okay.
Good.
And then the next one, again, is our most recent discussion here is Mr. Newfeld did make his application for his townhouse project. We will be setting a public hearing for that, and I'm assuming we'll try to do that on the 2nd of December as well. And then we'll get all the information to you regarding that application. And as I say, we'll have to work on a program for you to get to a point where there's equity for these incentive zonings.
Okay.
Very good.
Good. Nothing under public works, nothing under public safety, and nothing under community services. So looks like this will be a short meeting. Any old business? Any new business? Okay. Thank you all for coming.